Is it happening?
It's happening. It's
Is it
live. We're
happening right
live.
now?
It's live. We're
All right, let's do
live.
it.
We're going to do this. Welcome
I know
to
you got
yet
something on your
another.
mind today, Clint, so
Yep. Welcome
let's hear
to
about it.
yet another Ziti TV. In this week, we've had I'd say pleasant uptick in discourse. So we've got
Oh, yeah.
a few users
Yes.
asking some interesting, good questions. I'm also getting some feedback from me, by the way. So we've got some few users asking good questions. We've got a few users who are like, "Hey, I want to contribute," which we are like, "Wow, that's excellent." People are finding OpenZiti and realizing that application embedded zero trust really is the future. So lots of questions came out. How do I get started? We've had some relatively good doc for a while now. Doc is one of those things that's evergreen, can always get better. But one of the things we don't really have is like a really just high level, what is Ziti and what's it all about? So my goal for today is to just start down that path, maybe make some snippet videos. If we have any people in the chat who want to comment and ask questions, answer those questions. And so that's what we're doing today. But um, anything I missed about there, Ken? Does that sound about right?
That sounds like a good start. Yeah, I'll be here answering questions for you in the chat too. And if we miss you on the live broadcast, pop over to the discourse forum and I'll get a link into the chat and onto the screen for you to know where to go for that.
Yeah,
So
cool.
we are reachable.
All right. Well, then I'm going to keep my video as long as it looks reasonable. Well, whatever reasonable is for my video, and I'll just keep going. So, all right, what is the problem that Ziti is trying to solve? People are constantly talking about ransomware nowadays. So one of the plagues. I hate to use the term, given we're kind of in one, but one of the plagues of the internet age is reach and discoverability, and networking is so important to commerce everywhere. Everybody wants an app. Everybody needs an app. Everybody needs to be reachable. With all that reach came lots of attack vectors. So for the longest time now, quite some time, like 15 years, people have realized that the classical approach of securing your network is just not good enough, which is, let me take and make this really great wall and nobody can get past that really great wall. Ended up calling them firewalls. And then once you're inside the firewall, well, then, all bets are off. You can move about however you want to move about. And it even goes further back than that. If we want to go back into the whole, you know, tap and switches versus routers versus, well, I guess switches and routers is it. What is that? I was thinking about the whole, the back in the days when you had like the vampire taps, like, even before my networking days, you just listen in and get any network information you want at all. Anyway, so security has been on everybody's mind. And then even though we have security in our local networks, attackers can get through that firewall. Attackers can get onto your network. And so really a few years ago, NetFoundry and, the OpenZiti project was founded because we want to take that next step of securing not just your network, but all the way down into your application. In fact, I was watching a thing that one of our colleagues did recently, Philip, and it made me come up with the tagline of "Secure your application, not your network." Right. And so, what's the big idea behind that little phrase? For me, the big idea is, treat all your networks as hostile. We've been getting better at that as a planet, not just that foundry, but as a planet, right? Like, we started with putting getting rid of insecure protocols like FTP, HTTP, and then moving on to having segmented networks, and then having access policies to the networks, right? We'll keep going down and down. And so this OpenZiti project is all about trying to solve that security issue, and also making it just just drop dead easy, right? So the only way to do that is to really put security into your application. Another thing that you'll see mentioned a whole bunch on the ZD pages, the documentation, is this whole idea of zero trust. What does it mean to be zero trust? So zero trust to me, kind of like the name says, means you don't trust anything. Now that's obviously never truly capable. At some point, you have to trust something. So there has to be some kind of trust. So it's not so much about having absolutely no trust. It's about knowing where that trust comes from and having a trusted root and starting from that trusted root. Oftentimes with zero trust, that's going to come down to a person, right? It starts with me as the user who receives some sort of welcome email. It says, "Hey, come and join my network. I want you to have access," and you start the process in this way. So with a ZD network, that's similar. We have the notion of inviting users onto this network, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff in Zero Trust. And I'm not going to get into all of it right here because I have a whole presentation I give on this that you can absolutely go find. The latest one I did for Developer Week, but there's one from the Linux Foundation. If you Google Linux Foundation and Dovalok, if you can spell my name, or actually Ken, if you can find that one, actually I can probably find it real
I can do that.
fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have the link right here, and I'll send it to you over our secure chat app, which is we use Mattermost. Um, but you can go watch that video and see the big long presentation on a couple of key zero trust pillars. So that's what it means for zero trust in a 5-minute overview. And then another term you'll hear is the term dark. What does it mean for your network or for your application in this case to be dark? Well, in the network's term, that usually means you have a firewall, and that firewall denies any inbound traffic into your network. The same is true for an application. Oftentimes, if you're writing a server, you have to have a port open, or maybe even many ports open, and you need to respond to anonymous requests. And so, with the ZD application embedded zero trust network, you can actually write your server so that it has no listening ports, which is really neat. In that presentation that Ken will link is also a great bit of slides, and maybe I'll get into them here today about the superpowers of a zero trust network, particularly of an application embedded zero trust network. And the concept of dark comes in quite a bit there. And, maybe if the conversation gets there, we need to fill some time at the end because I do a good enough job of glossing over the bits and the pieces and the bits and the bobbles of what ZD is. Maybe we can get into that at the end. And so that's what dark means. And so with all that in mind, the doc is pretty good itself. Here I'm showing the landing page. And this shows you how to get started. So there's basically 4 ways that we have getting started right now. They're almost all the same. They're just different mechanisms to get started. So you need this whole idea of an overlay network. And I'm going to change to the docs page real quick because on the docs page, there is this little image. Open in a new tab, make it bigger. There. And this gives you a good idea of what a ZD zero trust overlay network looks like. So in the red there, you can see there's a controller, that big red box on the top of the screen, boop, 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 right here. So this controller is basically the very first piece of your overlay network, and we're in the process of making these controllers to be more than one. Right now, we're going to just focus on the fact that there's one, so it's the first thing that you end up installing. This is basically the root of your overlay network's trust. So this thing's going to have an entire PKI, which is a public key infrastructure, private key infrastructure. I never
Correct.
remember. Is it private or public?
It's public key infrastructure. The
Okay,
public
but
part is the part that only PKI has and the rest of cryptography doesn't.
Yeah, well, I just never know if it's public or private. I always goof that part up. So public key infrastructure, you have a whole PKI set up. That PKI is really important. It's also, if you're not familiar with it, it's really complicated to set up for lots and lots of people.
Yeah, it is hard to do it properly. Lots of
Yeah,
details.
for sure. And the ZD overlay network adds to that confusion because there's lots of little pieces. You can see here, there's, even though there's only what, one, two, three, four, like six, seven pieces listed here, some of which are the same router, edge routers, services, SDKs. Even though there's only seven things, there's actually a lot of PKI necessary. So you can see these little locks, right? Every single connection from, say, an edge router to the controller will be over something called mutual TLS, which means when this router connects to the controller, the router will present a certificate and say, "Hey, controller, I'm edge router." And the controller will go, "Are you really edge router?" "Well, yeah, you are edge router." "Hey, edge router, I'm controller." And the edge router will go, "Oh, are you really the controller?" "Oh, yeah, you are the controller." And so that's really at the key of what the public key infrastructure is all about, is enabling those sorts of checks. So everywhere between nodes on a ZD network, as you can see here, everywhere will be accomplished using mutual TLS. So this edge router to this router, this router to the controller, this, oh, I'm missing a little little arrow. I'll have to fix that.
Those
Um,
should be
and
talking to each other for sure.
you're not going to get very far if it's not. Yeah, it's just that's absolutely just a screw up. In fact, I think I fixed that in a recent
There's
diagram.
almost something to be said for minimalism in a diagram.
Sure. There still should be a line there. But anyway, mutual TLS, PKI, and cumbersome. All that's very cumbersome. The particularly if you're not, and if you're a pro at it, you're going to be, aha, that's so easy. I got this. But most people aren't. So if you come back to here,
Are you saying Ziti can do all of that for me?
I'm saying Ziti can't, no, but I'm saying the Ziti project can, because in the if you were to click on one of these buttons here, this button right here in particular, everything local, you'll see that there is a one line setup script that you can run. Now, caveat, if you're trying this on March 4th, 2022, it's a good chance this is broken right now, but we're fixing it. So what this will do is it will actually set up an entire ZD overlay network all for you. It will not look exactly like this. What will be missing is these routers in the middle and this edge router over here. So you get one controller, you get one edge router, and that's really all you need for a zero trust overlay network. Um, well, a ZD based zero trust overlay network anyway. And so you'll get all that and you can run it all locally. We'll do that later too. But I just wanted to give an overview. When you hear me talk about the controller, when you hear me talk about mutual TLS, when you hear me talk about PKI, when you see an edge router, you'll have a good mental model. And we're going to talk about all this a bit more because on these doc pages, if you just click on the docs and go to the overview itself, basically everything I'm going to say is all right here. I'm just going to add the same words and talk to it. So you can see what the features are of a network, the fact that really makes ZD different. What really makes ZD different is the fact that we are developer focused, meaning we have SDKs and we really want you to take ZD and put it into your applications. Don't just use um, a a client or an agent like VPNs do, but take that security all the way out of your network into your app. Secure your app, not your network. That goes back to that same tagline. Um, and then let's see. So segmentation, all this sort of stuff. Dark services. So you see the term. We talked about what dark means. It'll even discuss all this too. But let me go to my presentation. Let's see. Is this going to present? Go to the top. Go back to presenter mode. Here's presenter mode. All right. And so you see, this is the same exact diagram. I've got the line here. I took out the little lock icons. I took out the communication from the routers to the controllers, but everything that needs to talk to the controller.
Yeah, now I'm
Um,
zooming in.
yeah. So we have basically the same diagram as you saw before, just updated a little bit. I've added another API service down here. And so if you were to go back to, where is I got too many windows open. If we ever go back to this over here and start scrolling down, these are some of the, as I call them, the superpowers of a Ziti network. Contributing, overview, Ziti controller. All right. So we talked a little bit about the Ziti controller already. We said that it's the root of your trust. It has all of your PKI set up for you, and um, it also provides the API that you need in order to create all of the other pieces of your overlay network. That's also very important. So when you run that express setup, it'll make your controller for you and do all that, and then you'll be able to go in and actually take a look at it and understand what the CLI is all about. And we'll probably get into that as well later on. We have different kinds of routers. So fabric router is a term that we don't kind of use too much anymore. It's still relevant. I just tend to call them routers now, but really, at the base of a ZD network. Go back to my presentation. There are controller and routers, right? And a router is just something that knows how to move traffic from one place to the other. Then there are specializations of routers. Fabric routers, for example, are routers which don't have a component that we call edge enabled on them. So then we also have edge routers. So if you go back to the dock there, you can see there's a fabric router and there's an edge router. Oh, that's not what I want. Fabric router and edge router. The main difference here, like I said, fabric routers are meant to facilitate the movement of traffic. They form a mesh network, and they are smart where they will get your traffic to its destination as fast as possible. Edge routers, they do all that too. However, they also have ancillary functionality that's really important, which is they provide the on ramp onto your network for other clients, for SDK clients. So here we have on the left, I'm going to show a ZD Desktop Edge for Windows, which is that teeny tiny little box that you see right there, or right there. And then you see the little ZD symbol. We'll see a lot of ZD symbols. So in fact, actually, maybe I'll go back to because I'm not quite ready for the PowerPoint. I want to go back to the diagram. Oh, actually, it's this right here. So you can see, in order for a client to connect to a ZD overlay network, it has to connect through the edge at this time. Now, I'm going to leave off fabric services because those are there. So technically, I'm not exactly fully correct. But let's just pretend that it has to go through an edge router, and that's important because, generally speaking, you'll as a consumer, you're going to want all the good stuff that the edge components provide to your ZD overlay network.
Like authentication,
Exactly, like authentication. Yeah. Um,
authorization.
yeah, and those are all pieces that the other part of the edge provides, which is the SDK itself. So those SDKs will do the continual authentication where, we have these things called um, posture checks. We'll get into that in a second too, because that's actually, if I go back to the the detail page, this right up here. Okay, we'll let's keep going down, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. So we talked about fabric routers, we talked about edge routers. Uh, I jumped forward a little bit. We talked about edge clients. So every SDK will be an edge SDK, edge enabled. And so when I say the word SDK, I just naturally think of them as edge enabled because basically they will need to be. And then um, you'll also hear other SDKs, maybe like we have a tunneler SDK, which we use for our tunneling apps. So there are two main kinds of clients. There are tunneling clients, and there are edge clients. Yes, Ken.
All right, can I jump in with a clarifying question here?
Sure.
It sounds like what you're saying, our use of the word edge here is a point of contact between the overlay and underlay. And so I'm wondering if the analogy of like on ramp,
Let
off
me
ramp
let me
appeals
clarify
to
let me
you.
clarify one thing, because you use the
Okay.
terms overlay and underlay, right? I haven't actually said those words yet, but that's a good point. I have said ZD overlay network, but I have not clarified what that means.
I assume it's over
So,
something.
well, sure, right? And what when Ken says overlay and underlay, and when I said a zero trust overlay network, what I really mean is, and that actually goes back to the PowerPoint presentation. That's actually got a little nice little. No, I gotta minimize this so you can
I
see
know a lot of
the
people think of edge as like a remote compute platform or like maybe even mobile devices when we're talking about
sure.
the move from cloud to edge, but really we're talking about the networking edge, like a logical edge.
Yeah, but yeah, I would say that for me personally, those lines get really blurry immediately, because you absolutely can do all that. The only difference is for me, when we say edge, we just mean how do we get your traffic to you securely? It's the edge of Ziti, if you will, right? That's what the edge is, I would call.
Right.
So to go back to the overlay underlay, you can see the edge routers. They all sit on the internet, and then they all come together, and they form this great big overlay fabric. I make it bigger than the internet because, well, maybe because of hubris, but just because it looks better, but also because really a ZD overlay fabric could be a part of a private network too. So it doesn't
Absolutely.
have to only be the internet. It could also be in private address space. In fact, on this image, maybe I should expando it to include the APIs and the edge over here. So
Yeah, there's
anyway,
no gap there in reality.
no, that's right. In fact, yeah. So that ZD overlay fabric really should be quite a bit bigger because it is all of that and a bag of chips. Okay. So that's what an edge client is. Now we're into the using ZD section. And the first thing in this section, which in reality, I think identities should probably have come first, but is services. So if I go back to my little PowerPoint presentation, you can see this is what the overlay network, what does it mean when I'm talking about a service? So when I'm talking about a service, I really just mean the, it's not so clear either. Like this is a little circle and that's a little square. Trying to differentiate the fact that there's an initiator and there's a terminator. And in this case, we have a client on the left running in Windows because that's the ZD Desktop Edge for Windows is shown. And on the right, it's actually inside of your service. So there's some API that the client on the left is talking to on the right. And that's done through the ZD overlay network using that fabric. So the client on the left connected to an edge router, the API service on the right also connected to an edge router. They happen to be two different edge routers, but they don't need to be. That's not important. They just need to have an edge router that they can connect to. And once they're on the ZD overlay fabric, then we'll route the traffic accordingly and get your data into your service. So, or well, into your service, meaning it'll leave the ZD network and enter your process space. On the left here, I've shown a tunneling application. And on the right, I've shown an API service. So with Ziti, as I said before, we really want you to take and use the SDKs in your application itself. But it's not required. You can use a tunneler. And if you don't have access to the source code, or you aren't a developer or whatever, you can always go back to the more VPN-like example of using a thing that's like an agent or a VPN client. That's that thing we call tunnelers. On the right, you see the API service. So before Ken was asking the question, what is the edge? So this is a great example of where the edge is because on the right, you see the edge is your app. There almost isn't it. Almost isn't an edge. It's right into your process space of your application, which for my money is the best you can buy. I know of no way of more secure communication than this right now. And also, Ziti is only providing a pipe. That's also very important. So some people might think that there's more going on there, but Ziti is literally just a black hole from one side to the other, and how it gets there. It's like an SSH tunnel. How it gets there, nobody knows, nobody cares.
It's
What's
not just HTTP, is what you're saying,
That's right. It's
right?
whatever
It's
bytes. It's whatever
TCP,
bytes you
UDP,
want to send.
whatever.
In fact, I didn't on service. I don't even write that it's HTTP, right? It is just your service. So gRPC. Like I'm going to say it publicly now, Ken. My mission is to kill REST. I want to get rid of REST. Uh, I,
Ooh,
yeah, I'm going to throw the gauntlet down with I want to bring us all the way back to 1990s, and we're going to do RPC all over again because that's really all REST is. Half the time, I'm just trying to get my data from a REST server, and so
uh-huh.
I want to destroy REST. That's my and provide a secure way of
Well,
doing it. Right? Like
what's the positive inverse of that? What are you trying to build?
I don't understand the question.
Oh, just go on.
All right. That was too
Don't
bad.
import it.
Felt like there was something good there. All right. So anyway, I like our tangents. So this is what a service looks like. So if I had a second service, as you can see on the bottom, well, in that case, I might take a slightly different path. And here, it's actually wrong because I've now fun educational fact. I have drawn this diagram wrong. Ken, can you tell me why?
Well,
Is it
okay, I
obvious?
see. I take it the API server. You have a couple of API servers, and you've got what I believe to be an edge connection going from the tunneler to each, which have their respective tunnelers. There is a separate edge connection for each server going through the same remote fabric. Um, no, it's not leaping out at me what the problem is.
See, now this is a great example of how you know it's very easy to make a mistake. And Ken, very smart guy, worked here for a long time too. And me too. I made this diagram, and it's wrong. It's wrong because it's showing you going from the tunneler to an edge router to a fabric router to an edge client.
So you're
This
conflating fabric and edge.
yeah, there's no way that this edge client could communicate to the router. This fabric router has no edge componentry. So this service has to either be talking to this edge router or this edge
Right.
router. And as I have shown it, is wrong.
So what you're saying is that from the application's perspective that's enabled with the ZD Edge, the fabric is basically opaque or transparent, however you want to describe. It's invisible. It's not a factor. It just works. It just provides even lower level transport.
Yes. Was there more to that? So I would fix this by
No.
coming into here, editing the points, and either bringing this down to here like this, or bringing it all the way over to here like this. Either one of those are perfectly viable and reasonable. So I'm going to take the hairpin and I'm going to leave it like this. Now my diagram is correct because these are only for transit. And so for this particular service, the fastest way is to go into this edge router and right back out again to the service. Cool. Well, I learned something and I fixed my diagram at the same time. I love it. And it looks like we did have somebody in the chat loving that too. All right.
I
So
guess
now
so.
let's go next. Where was I? Let's go back to my here. So services. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about services. Oh, there's some fun things that you can do with a tunneling app too. I can see things mentioned in here. Like I saw this caught my eye, DNS. So with a API service, one of the superpowers that I talk about is direct addressability. And what I mean by that is, as a developer, I do not care about the IP address. I do not care about the DNS name. I only care about the service name. Now, that's similar to a DNS name, but it's not, because if if I want to be able to access some service in Amazon or whatever, like let's say I make a new website and I put it up there, I have to go make an entry in Route 53 so that everybody can route to me, right? I need an entry in DNS to get myself there, which is, frankly, to me, maybe not everybody, but to me, it's a pain. With Ziti and with a tunneler, I can just invent a DNS name, which is incredibly cool. So lots of times, if you see my demos, they'll use a .ziti at the end or something like that, just to indicate, like, that really just, hits that point home, because .ziti is not a top level domain. I can't go to Route 53 and make a .ziti domain name, but I can with Ziti, which is super cool. And then on top of that, which is even more cool with your application, if you did it in the app, you don't even have to care about the DNS name. You can just dial Clint's secret service. And then, you're not beholden to having a period or using top level domains or worrying about intercepts. You just have your application, open a channel, and write your bytes. And it's even easier and cooler. All right. Well, I'll digress from that for a minute. Let's talk about identities. So, what's an identity? Well, I kind of already hinted at it. We talked about the PKI. We've got a really great blog post by Andrew, who's one of our awesome engineers with a great security focus. He wrote a 5-piece blog post. In fact, it's actually under articles too that you can find about bootstrapping trust. You can go and read this. It is exceptional and worth reading. But I'm going to just gloss over it in 2 minutes because nobody cares about security. It's so hard, right? That's so hard. Ziti just makes it so easy for you. You don't have to worry about it. But what you do need to know is that an identity is required for everything that communicates on this network. So we talked about the PKI. We talked about mutual TLS. I said how a router identifies itself. And that is also true when it comes to boop, boop, boop. Where's my mouse? Too many windows, too many things. I'm going to go over here, click this button. That's also true when it comes to, there's supposed to be another one over here, but whatever, you can kind of see it, to the endpoints. So each of these are all endpoints or identities. And what that means is the API itself has a well-known identity, a strong identity that was created and enrolled. I don't know if I'm going to get into, because I can see it's already 11:33, but we have a strong identity that was based out of that PKI from that controller that is secure and secret to that service and that service alone. And it doesn't just stop at services, because if you desire, you can also add identities to each of your routers as well. This is something that we added not long back, the router tunneler combination. And that's cool because this will give you additional reach into, say, private data space. So, or data center space or networks. And we use this exclusively, extensively, that's the word. We use this extensively at NetFoundry because, we'll have customers with a private data center and they want to provide reach from one data center to another data center. And so you take a Ziti router, you plunk it down in the data center, you take another one, you plunk it into the other data center, you make that fabric in the middle there. And now all of a sudden, everything that's in the data center is available to that router. So instead of running an edge, Ziti edge tunnel, which you could certainly do, you can just plunk a router there and then enable it with an identity, and it almost it not almost it acts exactly as though it were um, an endpoint that is deployed, like, say, a service here, or a Ziti Edge tunnel, like what or a Ziti Desktop Edge for Windows, like what I'm running over here. And that's a little bit about identities. Policies are neat. In order to see policies, role attributes, and service policies, and all these other policies, it probably makes the most sense to see that in a in a UI, I personally have a easier time seeing this information and understanding this information in a UI. Let me see if I have one handy. I don't know. Where's my bookmarks? Let me go find where Clint AWS is, and we'll take a look. You know what? Maybe we'll just make one. Maybe this is the point where we'll just go back and we'll make an entire environment. So if I go back to here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to follow this one-liner setup script, and I'm going to create my local environment. You can see I've done this recently, and you can see I'm working around that little bug I mentioned that we're going to fix by building the stuff locally and setting my binder locally. But if I go ahead and run this, you'll see that this script will go out. It will create a whole PKI for me. In this case, I've already made it before, and so my keys all exist. You can see up here, this is all the PKI bits that it's making. It will then, actually, let me Ziti to Ziti home too. It will then make all the configuration files that I need. So here's the Ziti Edge router, and here is my controller YAML. Open that up. You can see this is everything that's necessary to configure the controller. And you can see a whole bunch of stuff is in here. You can explore it, but when I was talking about that PKI before, here are just a few sections of the PKI. You can see this identity section. This is what configures the controller, not so much the edge controller, but it's the controller. Ziti is extensible, so we have our edge controller is actually built around the controller. And if you want, you can have them be two separate things. And what I mean by that is you can see here we have port 6262 for the controller. We have port 10,000 for the management API. And then down here, we'll see an edge section. And then in this edge section, it will have an address field that tells you what the actual address is of your edge server. So if I were to go back and start my Ziti controller, take a look at the logs, make sure that it's running. Yay, it's running. You can see it's listening on 0.0.0.0 port 1280. So if I come over here and go to local host 1280, you can see it tells me my connection is not private. And this is maybe scary, but totally expected, because the certificate that's going to be coming back is a self-signed certificate. It was created by you or by me in the process of running the Express install. Totally reasonable. Read up about PKI and self-signed certificates, understand why it's reasonable, and then once you understand, click proceed. When you click proceed, you can see the controller is actually asking you to submit a certificate. You don't have to in this one, because this one's a public endpoint. You can just come here and get your Ziti version. You can see this Ziti version is 0.0.0 because I built it. But anyway, now we can see my server is actually running. And so the next thing I can do, if I go back to this quick start, is I can find the Ziti Administration Console and its installation. And I'm going to do the same steps here that it wants me to do. And this actually does take a hot minute. But if I go ahead and I clone it, I can then cd that to there, and I can run npm install. I've already done all this, so it should be really fast. While that happens, I'm going to copy. Oh, you know what? Does it have a little? No, it doesn't have a little copy block. Oh, well. It'll do all this fun stuff. Chug, chug, chug. Okay, this is more chugging than I hoped for, but I'll keep talking while it chugs. Reading the database. It's all very exciting. Okay, npm install. All right, that's going to take a while. Let's go back and look again at what the next command is. So this next command is going to set up the Ziti Admin Console for TLS. So whenever this thing ends up chugging through, which is going to take a second, then we can configure the Ziti Admin Console for TLS as well. And that's taken longer than I thought, longer than I wanted. Let's see what's next on our, maybe I can, while that does that, maybe I can come over here, see if I can't find the EC3 instance I already have running, because I already have one running somewhere. I'll just short circuit some of this. Hey, I found it. I found it. Look at me. Look at me go. This is what it's going to look like. The Ziti Admin Console. I should also mention this is all of our open source stuff, right? Like this is the OpenZiti project, it's Ziti TV. You can always go to the NetFoundry console and get a free version that's a little bit looks a little different and is our pay for product. But if you don't want to run all the stuff yourself, you don't have to. Here, what I'm doing in this one, this is where I'm producing a new video for Prometheus. And so this is going to contain some stuff for Prometheus. In this case, Minikube, you see Minikube Prometheus, you'll see a reflex service. But we were talking about policies. If I go over to Ziti policies, you can see the first policies in the ZAC, the Ziti Admin Console, is edge router policies, service edge router policies. What does that mean? Let's go back and see if we have this documented. And we have service policies, edge router policies. Okay, let's do edge router. Edge router policies. What this really means is, let me find edge router policy. There we are. Okay. This means is everything in Ziti is attribute-based access control, ABAC, not RBAC. ABAC is the new hotness, and so we are following the new hotness. And it does make things pretty easy because you can give identities or routers, you can give entities an attribute, and that attribute can then be used to control access. And that's what policies do. They control access. So here you can see all edge routers, and you can see the use of an attribute. We kind of went down the Twitter avenue here with a group being an attribute denoted with a hashtag, and a individual entity being denoted with an @ symbol. So you can think about that like that. That's why these also show up as red. You can also see that I enabled this was also installed using Express install. So if you run the Express install, you'll get an edge router, which is an identity. So if you remember before, I was talking about how you can give edge routers identities. That's what this red means. This edge router can access, or this identity can access this edge router. So edge router policies will provide access from identities to edge routers. And so you can see here, these routers with the following roles are able to be accessed by these identities. When you run Express install, it'll show, in fact, did it show me in, where is it, way back up here? Yep, right here in Express install. It'll say it's making a router and it's giving it the public attribute. And the reason why it does that is because it just makes it easier. If you have a public edge router, any identity connect into it, and that can be your on-ramp into the Ziti network. So that's what an edge router policy is. Then we have service policies. Service policies control the access of identities to services. So in this case, you can see anybody who has a Minikube A client endpoint attribute is able to access the services with the Minikube A services attribute. So if we go back and we look at the edge identities, you can see I made a dev client. And if I open that guy up, you can see that the dev client has access is a Minikube A client. So any of the services which are labeled with Minikube A services, go back and look at this attribute, and all of these should have them. So let me click on one and edit. Minikube A services means any endpoint or attribute or identity which I give the Minikube A clients ability or attribute will have the ability to address these services. So if you look at my current ZD Desktop Edge for Windows, which is right here, you can see I have a dev client. If I open it up, you can see I have 3 services, one of which is this Minikube A Kubernetes API, which is right, Minikube A, it's this one. Minikube A Kubernetes API. So now on my local computer, because I'm running a tunneler, I'm going to just jump ahead a little bit. If I go to Kubernetes, I don't know. I don't remember the where'd my thing go? Right here. Copy this. If I go, oh, look, this one's even a .zd because that's what I always do. I go there, it's going to say your connection is not private, and then when I proceed, it's going to tell me I don't have access because this is actually me accessing my Kubernetes API through Ziti. Okay, so anyway, let's go back. That was service policies. So we talked about edge router policies. We talked about service policies. The next kind of policy is a service edge router policy. And what this will do is this says basically services of the kind of a given attribute are able, I keep saying given attribute, but you could also, at them, you could say this user has access to this service or this user. You don't have to use attributes, but you can. I can.
Let
Nice
me
to
see
see
if
you
I've
back.
got this right, Clint. It sounds like the difference between roles and attributes is what I know at the time that I'm writing the policy. If I'm writing a role policy, then I can say, here's some permissions. I want to associate these with some entities. So I have to know about the permissions and entities before I can write the policy. With attributes, I can describe what kind of entities I want to grant what kinds of permissions to in advance.
For
And then
sure.
if those things ever pop into existence, then they'll have those permissions.
That's exactly right. And so that is a big benefit of the attribute-based access control is they don't have to exist for you to make the policy. So like Ken said, if I, add an edge router called bananas and I give it a policy that says, hey, anybody who has an edge router with an attribute named banana, when, the identity Clint shows up, he can connect to the banana edge router. I can
Like
make
if I
that
go in
policy before it
Instagram
exists.
or Twitter and subscribe to a hashtag and say, I want to know about this thing. If somebody's
Right.
talking about it, I want to read about it. And it doesn't have
Yeah.
to exist yet. I can find out later.
Yep. 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 Okay, so that's service edge router policies grants routers access to services. Generally speaking, you probably want your routers to have access to all your services, but who knows? There might be a time when you want to be able to control that only these edge routers are able to basically off ramp from
Mm.
the ZD fabric, the ZD overlay network
Do you
into that
recommend
particular
starting with like
service
a blanket rule and then getting more specific
for
later
for SERPs
if
always.
there's a reason
Yeah,
to?
yeah, always. First, when I make my edge router service edge router policies, it's almost always all. It's not even public all. Like I noticed this is public all. I usually do all, and I almost never modify this. At this time, this doesn't seem to be something that we have seen great use of. Meaning, nobody has made use of it in a broad fashion. Not that it's not great. I'm just saying nobody's actually used it because the flexibility of the other policies are just so great that you can do pretty much everything I want to be able to do with the edge router policies or the service
I think
policy.
it's a
So
question of knowledge. I mean, knowledge domain or interest or background. For example, if you're the kind of person who writes who's deep in BGP and you really want to be able to steer your traffic a certain way, then edge router policies are for you. You're going to be like, wow, I can make all this programmable and flexible and using attributes, and that's wonderful. But if you're just trying to get your app to connect securely, and then if you really want to stop thinking about the network as quickly as possible, then maybe just focusing on the edges of
that's
fabric.
another good tagline. Stop thinking about the network as quickly as possible.
Yeah, if you're trying to get
That's
if you're
exactly
focused
right.
on your app and you just want to
Yeah,
do this necessary, dirty, unpleasant security stuff as quickly as
right.
possible, if that's your focus. But if you're a very paranoid person and you want defense in depth, then you really want the mathematical assurances all the way down. I mean, you can go all the way down the stack and see those assurances with Ziti, but you can also just use it in a very convenient way.
Well, I would still say you get all those assurances just using ZD itself. The only question is whether or not you want to be able to have more fine grained control over where the data offloads. Like I, I think generally speaking, when it comes to service edge router policies, I have yet to personally find them to be as useful as I want them to be. But I think that there will be in the future once we start getting, once we start really going crazy. Um, okay, so that's all that. And then let's see if there's anything else that's interesting in here. I might have forgotten. Oh, I'm at the bottom. I'm also at the almost at the top of the hour too. Um, Let me just point out a few more things. So you saw all of this happy stuff happen. I installed the ZAC, even though I ended up not using it. Um, when you run the express install, you'll also does it get put on your path? ZD doesn't get put on your path, but it'll be if you source. Oh, you also have to have a bash shell. I mean, it does have to be bash, but I've tested the most in bash. It works in CSH2. I don't know any other shells it works in, but it might. Ziti quickstart. It's you can see mine is SG3, but realistically that is host name, and then host name .env. If you source that file, you can see it'll then add whatever your ZD home is to the path. Now this should work. Yeah. So I'm running this in a different window than I thought I was, which is why it's using this build. But that's all right. Now I have ZD again. I can do things like ZD edge list identities, ZD edge list service edge router policies, ZD edge list edge router policies. You can see this is the same information that you get when you come here and look at it. It's just in command line form. So I think most people will have an easier time looking at the UI at first. And once you get used to it, maybe you won't need the UI anymore. These are all based on a REST service. So you can go back out to the documentation. This is the wrong window. This is the right window. Let's go to API docs, REST, and oh yeah, it's downloadable. I forgot about that. You can go to this URL. So let me go back to this one. No, where did I? Okay, I'm gonna close both of those because I'm getting lost, bouncing all over the place. Let me just. Not what I want. I wanted to copy this, and I wanted to go to the. Oh, actually, I wanted to go to that UI because not. This is actually where the controller is too. It's on a different port though. Here we go. That's what I wanted to see. So now if I put that path in here, you can see it'll generate all this beautiful documentation for your REST endpoint. I personally like it when services do this because whatever version you're running will have the versions doc right here. You don't have to go find what version you're running, but that's how you can get at the doc. This is what's used by the Ziti CLI. It's what's used by that Ziti Admin Console. Let me stop there. And Ken, is there anything that I might have missed in a ZD 101 type of talk? Let's go back to the docs and see what it says. Covered policies, covered services, identities. We kind of covered clients, so we kind of talked about tunnelers versus
Yeah.
SDK.
So
Kind
we
of.
covered it all, but like we covered the high level points. But what is the absolute minimum that a software engineer needs to know and do, assuming that they know they want zero trust for their app? They're interested in this proposition that we have, which is, hey, you can just put it right inside your app with an SDK. let's say it's a Go server application, and they want to be able to deploy it anywhere and not worry about the networking around their server app. So, like without necessarily becoming educated about the entire project and all the like the fabric and the edge and the controller and all that, is it possible to bring it into the app and use it in a way like can I follow the quick start to spin up the network and then just see it working if I just
100%.
stay in my IDE?
100%. Particularly, that's one thing I didn't cover, actually. That question sparks a different idea, which is just after this part on the landing page is this part, which shows you how to get started with an SDK. So uh, I have a network. What's next? This is exactly what Ken is asking right here. I don't know if you read the landing page, but what a good tee up. I'll hit it out of the park, my friend. So you can pick one of your SDKs and get started. You know, if you click on the Go one, like Ken was talking about, it'll take you right to a bunch of examples. Um, Without a doubt, the most cumbersome thing for the first timer is going to be creating an identity and then using it. That's going to be
This is what I'm talking about. The
that's going to be
bare
the
minimum
hardest.
that I need to do. So I'm in my IDE. I know how
Yeah,
to use Git. I
yeah,
get the source code. I get the example. Now I know what to do to change my code just
yeah.
slightly so that it imports Ziti. And so now I need to run it somewhere. Let's say I ran the quick start on my box and I got the ZAC, the web GUI, up and running. So I'm going to go in there, and what's the bare minimum that I'm going to need to do in order to actually run my modified app after I build it?
Well, that's a really good question. So generally speaking, it is a few commands. Do you want to just do it right now? You want to see how long it takes me?
Sure, I'll
Yeah.
try to keep the outline in my head, and maybe I can post that as a comment. Like
Here,
step one,
here's what it is.
import the SDK.
Step one, make your overlay network using Express install or
Okay.
using the Docker stuff. All right,
Step one,
that's
quick
step one.
start. Get
Step
the whole thing
step
running.
2. Step 2, figure out what you wanna do. Let's say let's say we're going to simply send some bytes from here over to here and send them back again. That's all we're gonna do, right? An
Okay.
echo. We're gonna do an echo.
So I've got two pieces of software. Then they need to talk to each other, is what you're
Uh,
saying. That might be
Ziti
one. That might be
Ziti
what I'm
is
trying to do.
exclusively about talking to something. So
Sure,
there's
sure.
always 2 pieces. Always. It's never 1
Oh,
piece.
okay.
It's
Okay.
always 2 pieces. And so if you're writing an app and if you're writing an app, there's always a client, there's always a server, right? And so it depends on who you're talking to and what you want to get back. In this case, the easiest example that I always fall back to is I call it the reflex server. It's just an echo server. It's like,
Yep.
hey,
Yep.
I'm going to send you bytes.
You said this.
You sent me some bytes, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's easy peasy. That's the
Did you
best you
ever
can get.
have the
So
parrot game when you were a kid? Did
mm,
you have like a? There was this really old.
let's put a pin in this. All right,
Okay.
so hang on
Okay.
1 second. So you need
Keep
two
going from
identities. You need 2 identities.
there.
So
Okay.
you'll have
One
to
for each
run.
side.
That's right. You'll have to run one ZD create for an identity,
Okay.
one ZD create for an identity, and then you will
Okay.
need to make a service ZD create service.
Okay.
Then you will need then you will need to make a policy ZD create policy. Let client issue a bind, and then you will need another policy. Let server listen. So that's what you'll need. Now you could smush those into one policy if you want to get fancy, but like
Okay.
like for actually no, you'll need both. You need at least a dial and you need a bind policy because the initiator needs to have the ability of dialing the service. The server needs the ability of listening for a service. Does that make sense?
All
You
right.
can
So
actually you
I
can
run
see
my
all that
network.
with the ZSSH demo.
I run my network. I'm just trying to see if I can possibly compress it into a bite-sized piece. So I run the network with a quick start. I don't need to understand everything about how it works. I know it takes a while. I know it does a whole bunch of PKI magic. Yay, that's great. Then I used Ziti to create two identities because I got to have two. One thing to talk to each other, kind of like client and server, but it's more like peer to peer. because we're using an
Right.
overlay.
That's right.
So it doesn't like they're reachable. They're both reachable if you want them to be, according to your policy. Okay, so I've got
That's
two
right.
identities, which are like certificates that are unique and very secure. And then I need I think you said a service config or a service that is basically describing their communication and the
That's right.
configuration of
No,
each. Like
no,
if I want to
no.
configure one
You
as a
need a
client, one as a
service.
server.
No, no, no. The service doesn't describe their configurations at all. You don't need a so in a SDK app, in a app embedded zero trust situation, you do not need any configuration whatsoever. You simply need a service. So generally, when we talk about tunnelers, we always think about configurations because configs are necessary, but they are not necessary in an application embedded situation. You just need to know the name of the service you want to dial, and that is it.
Okay, so that's like a unique identifier or label for one of the other identities that I want to talk to, or perhaps a set of identities if it's like a load balancing situation.
If it's a load balancing situation, it would probably be you would be dialing the service itself, and we've just gone from the 101 class to the 401 class.
Let's not do that.
Let's not do that. Let's keep it simple, like you said. So one initiator, receiver, client, server, however you want to call it.
Okay.
So
Fine.
to give you an example, if you were to go out into GitHub and look at the Ziti doc project, I have this cheat sheet that is available out there. It shows you the commands. Now, some of these commands are totally and utterly ancillary and worthless because they're not going to exist right now. But if you're trying to run this over and over again, like I was, you need to delete them. So you can see here, I'm making a service name. I'm going to call it ZSSH service. Here, I'm making a client identity and a server identity. They're just going to be ZSSH service client, ZSSH service server. And then I'm going to use a port number. And I use the port number because the client, actually, I don't even know why does it is used. It's used probably because I made a tunneler based client to be able to work with this as well. But you don't even need that in this case. So you don't even need these configs. You would just need the service and the service policy. So you create your two identities, ZD Edge create identity device or user, whatever, server name, client name, and then you create your service, and then you don't need the configs because I said you don't need them, but whatever, you can keep them or not. Like
That's
you can see,
something
it's
that
only
I
like
had escaped my notice. You're saying that the service configs are irrelevant if both sides are embedded?
100%. Let's just do it. Let's just can
Okay.
watch. Let's We're
I
just
didn't
gonna
realize it
do
was
it.
that magical. I didn't realize that the configs were only if you're trying to describe like the on-ramp or off-ramp to the normal IP network from the overlay or to the overlay.
So
I mean, I've done it, but I
I've
just
I have
didn't
started
realize
ZD
that.
controller. I've started ZD router. Okay.
Yeah,
I will oftentimes use this particular cheat sheet because I might forget how to make an identity. But let's do a ZD Edge,
that is so
create
cool.
identity,
It's
reflect client.jwt. Put it up. What did I screw wrong? User.
is it
Right.
capital
So now
letter? Oh, there you go.
no, I got to do the user. Now we'll do server.
Right, you're minting the second identity.
Yep.
So now
So now
this
I've
can
made
talk to
two
each other.
identities. All right.
Okay.
Now I'm going to ZD Edge create service reflect. Okay. So
Okay.
now that's that. Now I'm going to change to my
That's
GitHub
like a
folder.
placeholder because it's just an entity. It just describes it's a service. It's a placeholder for a communications channel.
All it is. That is exactly all it is. SDK Golang examples. Command. Okay. So inside of here, I have a client and I have a server. This code's already
Yeah.
written. So
Yeah.
get info. That's where you can go get it from. So I'm going to do a go build server. Actually, let's do a go run server. Actually, So 2 seconds. I got to take a step back because this is the main file. So the
You've
main
got your
file,
server app there. You got to associate that with that identity that you created somehow.
yeah. So if I cat main.go here, you can see it does some stuff, but really the key that I want to show is how it looks for the word server. Okay, so here's the server command, here's the client command, and then depending on which you are running, it will either run the server command or the client command, which is what I was looking for. I was looking for that if block. I don't know where that if block is, but you can. Where's the if block? Main, loggers, persistent run, flags, mark, server command. It's because it's a flag. So when you run this main function, you'll have to provide the service name and the identity, and then choose whether you want to run as server or client. So we'll do that. So let's do a go run main.go server. I didn't. I missed 2 steps, Ken. Ziti edge and roll. Reflect. Oh
You could
boy.
argue that that enroll piece is really part of creating the identity. But yeah, I see why
It
it's a
is, but I
central
forgot it.
step.
So
I'm not going
let's
to
go
detail it in the shortest path
copy
outline.
here. Start.jwt to dot. All right. So now I want to do a main. Nope. Move star.jwt dot dot. I got main, right? Yeah. So now I want a ZD edge and roll reflect client
I'm going to narrate what you're doing so I can
server.
keep it fresh in my head. So we did step number 2, which is create at least 2 IDs, and then we remembered that we needed to go back and do the enroll step on each of those. And what that means is that we are consuming a one-time token that's unique to that identity and generating or installing, if you will, and that identity on a device, because the enroll step entails reading that one-time token, contacting the control plane with a certificate signing request generated from a private key that is local to that device, installed permanently in a specific location, and then getting back a certificate. So it just automates all that MTLS stuff that is everyone would do if it was easier.
Yeah. Now you can see I ran my server and it tells me that service reflect is not found. So far, I have created an identity. I have created 2 identities, enrolled 2 identities, and then created a service, and then run my command. At this point, do you know what I did wrong? Because I have forgotten something. I made 2 identities.
Mm.
I enrolled them. I then made a service, and I then tried to use the service.
Do you have, well, you need the edge router policy that allows, do you have an edge router policy that aligns your identity with the service edge router policy of the services? And do the services have a service? It got to meet in the
Let's
middle,
run.
right?
Let's run
Services
policy
need a
advisor.
service policy, and the services need a router policies, and the identities need a router policy that
Yep.
meets in the middle.
So let's run Policy Advisor, which is out there. Policy Advisor tells me that the Reflect server does not have access to any services. So
Okay, so you need router policies that meet in the middle, and you need service policies that meet in the middle.
that's right. So I did not grant a service policy for the server. So that
Oh, you're
is
because you have like a blanket router policy, so that's not an issue here,
right. So
right?
now I
Okay.
need to make a ZD Edge create service policy. This
I
is a
guess you could have a blanket service policy if you wanted all of your identities in a, if you wanted your
do
network
it.
itself to be like
Do it.
a simple service policy. If you didn't need to get more granular than that, if your network only does one thing, then you could use a blanket
Or if you're just
policy.
doing for dev, right? So
Sure.
let's see. Didn't give it a name. All bind.
Create service policy. So you're going to allow any
Let
identity
me
to
scroll up
bind
here.
any service.
Exactly.
Does the identity still have to decide to bind it, or is it going to
Yes.
automatically bind?
Yes. No.
Okay.
The identity. So that is the if you were to look at the command server. If you look at what this does, is it makes a new config and listens.
Okay.
That is the I
And that's a
want to
Ziti call.
bind.
That's a
That's right.
Ziti method. It's a method
Yep.
on the Ziti class. Okay.
That's right. So
So
now you
the
see I
identity
made,
class ask to bind, and it
yep,
only will succeed if it has permission in the service policy.
right. And so now I'm going to make an all dial policy. So you saw me make the bind policy up here. And so now my server should start. In fact, let's see if the server starts. This is what I expect to see. There it goes. Okay. No such host. Well, we have a minor problem with with the Express install. This should not be happening. And I know Jeff is on the line, so he can watch this. So, but this is okay. I can fix this real quick. I can just go to
You know what's wrong?
yeah. So it is telling me that SG3 Edge router does not exist because it doesn't. Express. So if I look at, let me show you what's wrong. We're going to take a detour, but that's all right. If we go to .ziti and we go to quickstart and we go to SG3 and we look at the SG3 edge router.yaml, you'll see the advertise address.
This is a configuration file for the Ziti router.
That's right. And so what this does is it says, hey, if you're an edge client and you try to connect to me, you are supposed to dial
Yeah.
SG3 edge router.
So the
But
identity can't resolve that.
that's right. That is the full problem. But I can fix that by going to Etsy hosts.
Okay. Yeah, just fake it.
Now you
Yeah.
shouldn't have to do this because I gotta
It's just because you're running it locally.
no
If we
no no
write a
no no
quick
no
start,
no 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 no
right?
no. It's because there's a bug.
Oh, okay.
We'll fix the bug. What it should show you. Oh, in fact, you know what? I'm not gonna fix it this way. I'm gonna fix it by editing, not this file. I'm gonna edit this file. I'll show you how you
Hmm.
fix it.
There you go. It just needs. This is an advertisement from the router. It's gonna broadcast. Hey, look at me.
So to fix it, I'm just going to use my host name, which is what it should have been in the first place.
Oh, okay. So
And then
it'll
I'm going
get
to stop
resolve to like
all.
loopback or something.
That's right. Stop all edge routers and then start. That's edge router and PSZ again, and then go way up here till our go run. Here and run our go run main reflect. It should show me. So
The
this has
certificate's already
ripple
been
effects.
issued.
This has ripple
Right.
effects. When the PKI was created, it was created with a sans that says SG3 edge
Yeah, I
router.
get it. So you need a
So,
new one. You need to re-enroll this router or recreate this router so it gets
well,
a
I'm going to
verifiable
edit.
server cert.
Well, I'm going to edit the quick start SG3 edge router.yaml. I'm going to find SG3 in here. Oh my goodness. I'm going to just go down like this. I'm going to make this after edge route. I'm going to put that back because that's important
Okay.
now. And now I'm going to go sudo vi etsy hosts.
Just make that resolvable to the same listener.
Exactly. That's 127.0.0.1. And now, now it should work.
Now you
Fingers
need
crossed.
to you
I
don't
got
need to
something
bounce
else
the
wrong.
router is because it's SG3 tac
So,
edge tac
so
router. It's
yeah,
still
no,
oh,
that's okay.
you do need to bounce the router because you changed the
No.
config.
Oh yeah. Good
You need to
point. Thank
restart
you.
all routers.
Yep. Forgot I didn't do that.
And then it'll
Something else is wrong.
advertise.
Okay, good. Nope, there it
Yeah,
goes.
there we go.
Now it's connected. That's what we should see. Okay,
Right,
well,
so
we're
that's your
almost there.
server app using one of the two identities you created,
Yep.
and you went and you created a blanket router policy, a blanket service policy, and now it should just work.
Yep.
So that's the shortest path. Okay, create a service. Oh, we created a service. I forgot to mention that. Blanket router policy. Blanket service policy.
Dash I.
Profit. Is that all that's left?
let's see. Fail. Oh, nope. Guess what? We didn't make that dial policy. So
So you
it
need
says,
blanket dial policy, dial service policy, blanket bind service policy.
right.
But
If
the
you
you only need. Do you also need to make a blanket service edge router policy?
already done that,
Okay.
the express install should do all that for you. So express install
Okay.
should have taken care of all this, but a couple of bugs, so gotta just fix this all. So now
Sure.
I made the bind policy and I was going to make the dial policy, and then I said, well, let's make sure the server starts. And then we had some problems, and I forgot to finish making
There we
the
go.
all dial policy.
I think we're really close to having like a short checklist though, like a sanity check for any network.
Yeah, now this should work. And hi
There it
there,
is.
I am a client.
There it
See,
is.
I read, hi there, I am a client. You
So
sent
at this moment, these two apps, the client and the server, they could be arguably
anywhere,
just about anywhere, like
not just
without
about,
any
literally,
like and super secure from edge to edge with like double encryption and all of the power, all the superpowers of networking built right into the app using a, I don't know if you'd call it stateless, but certainly like a no knowledge, no configuration kind of backplane, zero trust backplane. But those two apps can be anywhere, and they don't
for
need
sure.
firewall rules. They don't need
The only
VPNs. They don't
thing
need
that's
anything like
necessary,
that.
the singular thing that is required, other than the fact that you need an entire overlay network, right? Well, we'll take the overlay network as a given, but if you even have that, now I have too many windows open. If you even have that overlay network, there is still one thing that is very, very important. And if you go back to the OpenZiti doc, cd github.io, go to docs. The most important thing is you need one edge router, which is public that, or sorry, you need one edge router that both of your clients can connect to. Because if, oh, and it doesn't have to be the same one, they both need an edge router that they can
Right.
connect to. And then the magic is those edge routers need to be able to form a mesh either directly to each other or
Right.
through an intermediary. So
Sure.
if I were to make a really quick PowerPoint that just shows that, I would do it. I would do it.
So if I sign up for like a partially or fully managed version of this through the NetFoundry Teams free tier, then is any of this short list of 5 things done for me?
If you're
I guess you
if you're
could
on the
kind of.
net, I mean, the net foundry stuff is a whole different ball of wax. Like it does not do. It, come on,
Well, like the
does not
problem
it
of
does not do
having like a
everything you need.
reachable edge router becomes easier because I can just click to create one.
Well, yeah, but you have to have a
And-
cloud account, and then you have to. Well, no, actually, you have to create that edge router that will make it, and then I mean, but that's like let's leave the net foundry stuff out of this for unless we're gonna maybe we should quit now and maybe you and I can just keep talking. But um, you need an edge router which is addressable by your endpoints. I specifically am not saying public because if, let's say, you were a telecom, right? I used to
Mhm.
work for a giant tier one telecom and you want to run Ziti on your internal network. I recommend it. I'll help you do it. Just do it. If you see this video and you're a telecom and you want to do that, let me know. I'll help you. But you own your whole IP address space. You can
Right.
install the controller on your network, and then Ken in whatever country you're in can connect to an edge router that's on your network, and then that edge router can connect to another edge router and another edge router, or just one. It doesn't matter. And then get to my machine, which can also connect to the same overlay network. That's literally all you need. But the simplest thing in terms of the internet is to put that thing in public. If you put that edge router out
Sure.
in the public, then that's all you need, one edge router. And that's why when you run the express install and you do it someplace public, like I did with this EC2 instance that I have out here, that is the simplest way to do it. So right here, I could make Ken an identity right
Mhm.
now, deliver it to you, make my own, and do the exact same demo. And you could use your Reflect client to my Reflect server, just
Right.
like that. So to recap, to make this simple, you need one public edge router. That's the minimum you need.
Or reachable.
Both of your endpoints need to be able to reach that edge router. Then you need to make identities for each of those endpoints. Then you need to make a service. Then you need to make the two policies, the dial policy and the bind policy. And then you need to run the code or write your code. And that's it.
Okay.
Profit.
Okay.
What a long ZDTV this has turned into, but that was fun. That was a good that'll probably
Really
help
two in
somebody
one.
else. This is really 2 in 1. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Ken. I think that's going to wrap.
Yeah, I agree.
I need to drink some water now. It's been talking for a while. So thanks. Hopefully, we had some people out there watching. That's cool. Hopefully, you learned something. And if you have any questions, hit us up on Discourse. Go like and subscribe to our Ziti repository. We need more stars on Ziti so that we can get out to the world and let the world know how awesome Ziti is. So go to GitHub and star us. Got a couple Twitter handles, OpenZiti and OpenZiggy. Ziggy's our mascot. Go follow them. You can follow me if you want, but really OpenZiti and OpenZiggy are better. And I think that'll be a wrap. So cool, man. Ken, as
Agreed.
always, it was an entertaining Friday. I like ZDTV, and we'll see you guys next time.
Likewise. See